all together.
It's time for Maths with Mr. Thomas.
Here we go with Chapter 1, Significant Figures, and we're looking at Lesson 2, Rounding to Significant Figures. Taking an example from the last lesson, if I told you that I won £3,192,725 in the National Lottery, you're not going to remember that whole number. What you will take away from that is that I won about £3 million in the National Lottery. What we're doing with that number is we are rounding it, and what we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to round to so many significant figures. The way that is done is, first of all, we have to identify that first significant figure. In other words, the first non-zero digit. After that, we'll look for the significant figure that we are wanting to round to. If we want to round to 2 significant figures, we look for the second significant figure. If we want to round to 5 significant figures, we look for the 5th significant figure. What we then do is we look for its place value, and what I mean by place value is think back to primary school with your units, your tens, your hundreds, your tenths, hundredths, and so on. I'm just going to call it first decimal place, second decimal place. So identify which column that is in, and then what you would do is you would round that number to that place value. So let's try a few examples with that. So, example 1. Round each of the following numbers to 1 significant figure. So, starting off with 62. Again, the way this is done, we first of all look for the first significant figure. First significant figure here is 6. Well done. So that is the first significant figure. Find the significant figure required. Well, because we're rounding to 1 significant figure, we only want that first significant figure there. So we're just looking at the 6. If we think about its place value, is that in the hundreds, the tens, the units? Is it in the first decimal place? Well, it's obviously in the tens. That is the tens column there, and then the units beside it. So we would round that number to the nearest 10 because that 6 is in the tens column. And to the nearest 10, that is... brilliant, it is 60. So that would be our number to 1 significant figure. With B, first of all, find the first significant figure. What would that be, Emily? What? Good. So, we want to round to 1 significant figure, so we just look for that first significant figure. What column is that in, Daniel? Thousands. Good, that's in the thousands, so we round that number to the nearest 1,000. And that would be... good, it would be 5,000. If anybody's unsure about the whole rounding part, this is a little poem that I use to round. So if we will have that 5,279, to round that number then to the nearest 1,000, well, we find our number, so we've done that. We've got the 5, we know that's in the thousands column, that's what we want to round to. So we find our number, we look next door. If this number here is 4 or less, then we just ignore. So instead of 5,000 and then something, it would just stay as 5,000. If we look next door and this number here was 5 or more, then what we do is we add 1 more to this number that we found in the thousands column. So instead of 5,000, it would go to 6,000. That's just in case anybody is unsure of that. Maybe bring that back out with some of the other examples. So with C, first of all, find our first significant figure. The first significant figure here is the 8. That is what we want to round to. The column that is in is the 100, so we now need to round this number to the nearest 100. So find our number, look next door. If it's 5 or more, which it is, the 9 is more than 5, so we add 1 more. So instead of being 800, it would go to 900. Woo! With D, 91,010. Our first significant figure is the 9. That is what we want to round to. That's our significant figure required. Identify the place value. Well, this column here is the tens of thousands. So we want to round to the nearest 10,000. So find our number, look next door. If it's 4 or less, then we just ignore. So instead of being 90,000, it's just going to stay as 90,000. After that, with E, find our first significant figure. This time it is the 4. So we want to round this number to the nearest 10 because the 4 is in the tens column. So to the nearest 10, 40.0 goes to... good, it just goes to 40. Make sure you don't keep it as 40.0 because the 0.0 would then become significant and our number would have 1, 2, 3 significant figures. We just want 1. With F, the first significant figure is the 6 is the first digit that is not a 0. That is in the second decimal place, so we want to round this number to the second decimal place. So we find our number, we look next door, it's 5 or more, so we add one more, so the 6 will go to a 7, and we will have 0.07. Dun, dun, dun. With G, we have 47,261. First significant figure is the 4. It's what we want to round to. That is in the tens of thousands, so we want to round this number to the nearest 10,000. Find our number, look next door. It is 5 or more, so we add one more. So instead of being 40 something thousand, it would go up to 50,000. Woo! With H, the first significant figure is the first non-zero digit, which is the 4. That is in the first decimal place. So we want to round this number to one decimal place. So find our number, look next door, it's 4 or less, so we just ignore. So we ignore the rest of that and we just keep the 0.4. With I, we have 7,350,000. The first significant figure is the 7. So we want to round to that. Find our number, look next door, it's 4 or less, so we just ignore. So instead of being 7 million and something, it just goes to 7 million. Next one, with J, we have 49.99. First significant figure is the 4. That is in the tens column, so we round that number to the nearest 10. I'm sure you can do that without the poem, but we find our number, we look next door, it's 5 or more, so we add one more. So instead of being 40 something, the 4 would go up to a 5. So you would have 50, and we just ignore the rest of it. Woo! So that is rounding to one significant figure. Let's try rounding to two significant figures. Again, here is the rounding poem, just in case you're wanting this to help you. So, to two significant figures, first of all, we find the first significant figure. You can see in 708, the 7 is the first significant figure. Beside that, we have the second significant figure. So this is it here. This is the one that we are interested in. What column is that in if we identify the place value? Tens. Good, that is in the tens, so we round this number to the nearest 10. So, find our number, look next door, it's 5 or more, so we add one more. So instead of staying at 0, that will go up to a 1, and then we'll ignore the rest of it. So, we'd have 710. That 0 just holds the place value, so that would go to 710. With B, 50,800. Again, we want to find the first significant figure. Because we're rounding to two significant figures, we want to find that second significant figure. Think about the column that is in. So this column here is the thousands, so we want to round this number to the nearest 1,000. So, find your number, look next door, it's 5 or more, so you add one more. So the 0 will go up to a 1, so you'd have 51,000. With C, 58.28. Our first significant figure, our first number that is not a 0, is the 5. We want to find the second significant figure, because that's what we want to round to, and that's always beside the first significant figure. That's just in the units, or the ones column, so we want to round this to the nearest unit, or the nearest whole number. So we find our number, we look next door, it's 4 or less, so we just ignore. So we ignore that 0.28, and we're just left with 58. With D, 8.174. First of all, find the first significant figure. First number that is not a 0 is the 8. Beside that is the second, and that's what we want to round to. It's round to two significant figures. This here is the first decimal place, so that is what we want to round to. We want to round that to one decimal place. So find your number, look next door. It's 5 or more, so you add one more. So instead of being 8.1, it will go to 8.2. Woo! With E, 0.00168. So the first significant figure, first number that is not a 0, is the 1. Beside that, we have the second significant figure, which there is the 6. That is in the fourth decimal place, so we want to round this number to 4 decimal places. To do that, we find our number, we'll look next door, it's 5 or more, so we add one more, so the 6 will go up to a 7, and we will stop. We don't write anything else after that, so we'll have 0.0017. Woo! And that will be that number rounded to two significant figures. With F, first significant figure is the 7. After that, we'd have the second significant figure. That's what we want to round to. We want to round to two significant figures. So we find our number. We look next door. It's 4 or less, so we just ignore it. And we're rounding this to the nearest 100, so that will stay as 7,100. With G, first significant figure is the 2. Beside it, we have the second significant figure. It's what we want to round to, and it's in the tens of thousands. So we want to round that number to the nearest 10,000. Find your number. Look next door. It's 4 or less, so we just ignore. So it would stay as 270,000. With H, 69.73. We want to round that to 2 significant figures. So the first significant figure is the 6, and beside it is the 9. That's the second significant figure. That there is the units, and that's what we want to round to. So we want to round to the nearest whole number. So find your number. Look next door. It's 5 or more, so you add 1 more. So the 9 will go up to a 0, and if the 9 goes up to a 0, the 6 will also go up as well. So that would go up to 70. You're perfectly right. If you look at this number here, 70, well, 70 really just has one significant figure, because that's the first digit. It's not a 0, it ends before the decimal, so count up to the last number that's not a 0 is still that 7, so it's just one significant figure. So sometimes when you are asked to round to 2 significant figures, it's impossible to do, and you will just get one significant figure in your answer. However, that is still deemed the correct answer. With I, once again, find the first significant figure. So the first digit that is not a 0 is the 4. Beside that is the second significant figure, which is this 4 here. That is what we want to round to because it's the second significant figure. Think about the column it's in. Well, it's in the second decimal place, so we want to round that number to 2 decimal places. To do that, find your number. Look next door, it's 5 or more, so you add 1 more. So the 4 will go up to a 5, and you write nothing after it, so you'd have 0.45. Woo! With J, first significant figure, first digit that is not a 0 is the 3. Beside that is the second significant figure. Because we're rounding to 2 significant figures, we have to look for that second significant figure. The column it's in, the place value, is just the units, so we want to round this number to the nearest whole number. I'm sure you can do that. 39.828 will go to then, Daniel, 40. Brilliant. And once again, the same problem with H. If you look at the answer, really there's just one significant figure, but it's still the correct answer. Tick and a smiley face. Woo! Well done. Let's try one final set of questions, but this time we are rounding to 3 significant figures. And once again, if you want it, I shall put the rounding poem just here. Woo! So, to round to 3 significant figures, first of all, find the first significant figure. So in 6,942, the first significant figure is the 6. Beside that is the second significant figure. Because we're rounding to 3 significant figures, we want to find that third significant figure, which is just here. Identify the place value. So the place value of the 4, well, that's the units, that's the tens, that's the hundreds, that's the thousands. We know that is 6,942. That's the tens. So we round this number to the nearest 10. So find your number. Look next door. It's 4 or less. We just ignore. So instead of on the end having 42, we would ignore the 2 and we would just have 40. So the answer is 6,940. Or you could just think 42 is closer to 40, so in the end you will just have 40. With B, the first significant figure is the 6. Woo! We want to round to 3 significant figures, so find that third significant figure. Second significant figure is the 2, and the third is the 9. So the column that is in is the hundreds. So we want to round that number to the nearest hundreds. So find your number. You look next door. It's 5 or more, so you add 1 more. So if it's a 9, the 9 will go up to a 0, which doesn't make much sense. But the number in front of that will go up as well. So the 2 will go to a 3. So you would have 63,000 as your answer. Similarly to some of the questions on the other set, if you look at this number here, well, really there's 2 significant figures. There's the 6 and the 3, and then you're really ignoring those zeros. So sometimes when you're asked to round to 3 significant figures, you can maybe only round to 1 or 2. Again, that is still the correct answer if you do that. With C, we want to round that to 3 significant figures. The first significant figure is the 1. There's the second significant figure. There is the third. That place value is the tenths, or the first decimal place. So we want to round that number to 1 decimal place. So to 1 decimal place, that will be, Andrew, 13.8. Good. We'll go to 13.8. Fantastic. With D, the first significant figure is the 3. Good, because it's the first digit that is not a 0. There's the second significant figure, and there's the third significant figure. That there is in the third decimal place, so we round this number to 3 decimal places. To do that, we find our number, which is here. We've just done that. Find your number, look next door, it's 5 or more, so you add one more. So the 6 will go up to a 7, and you don't write anything else after it. So you'd have 0.397. Woo! And you can see there, you have 3 decimal places. With E, the first digit that is not a 0 is the 1, so that's the first significant figure. There is the second, there is the third. That's the third significant figure, which we have found. Look at that! Woo! We want to round that to 4 decimal places because that third significant figure is in the 4th decimal place. So to do that, find your number, look next door, it's 5 or more, so you add one more. So the 7 will go up to an 8, and you write nothing after it. So you will have 0.0178. Way. With F, 34,074. Again, round that to 3 significant figures. There is a first significant figure because it's the first digit that is not a 0. Beside it is the second significant figure, and beside that is the third. The place value of that is the hundreds. Brilliant. So we round this number to the nearest hundreds. Find your number, look next door, it's 5 or more, so you add one more. So instead of staying at 0, it'll go up to 100. And again, you write nothing after that. So you'd have 34,100. With G, first significant figure is the 7, is the first digit that's not a 0. That's the second, that's the third. The column is the thousands. Good, that is 1,000, so we round this number to the nearest 1,000. So 731,188 will go to 731,000. With H, the first significant figure is the 1. Beside it is the second. Beside that is the third. That is the third significant figure. That's what we want to round to. The place value here is just the tenths, or the first decimal place, so we want to round to 1 decimal place. Find your number, look next door. It's 5 or more, so you add one more. So the 2 will go up to a 3, and you'd have 13.3. With I, first significant figure is the 2. Beside that is the second significant figure. Beside that is a third, which is what we want. We want to round to 3 significant figures. So that third significant figure is in the third decimal place. So we want to round this number to 3 decimal places. To do that, find our number, look next door. It's 4 or less, so we just ignore. So we can ignore all that. And we have our answer right there, 0.293. And the last one for J, 0.037777. First significant figure is the 3 because it's the first digit that is not a 0. Beside it's the second, beside that is the third. That 7 here that we're looking at is in the 4th decimal place, so we want to round this number to 4 decimal places. So find your number, look next door, it's 5 or more, so you add one more onto this number. So the 7 will go up to an 8, leaving us with 0.0378. Woo! Look back to any of these questions if you are unsure, or speed through them a bit quicker in the video if you're wanting to check that you are managing them all right. If there's any problems, once again, just let me know. But if you're quite confident with that, try them in the TJ book. It's the 4+ book, page 6, questions 3 to 8. Check your answers as you go. Make sure you are managing this. And again, think about the rounding poem if that helps you. Woo! Enjoy! See ya!